Good morning, everyone. So today I will try to summarize a little bit some of the best experience we have seen in the survey we've done for BAFU, and I will try also to synthesize some way of managing in an innovative way industrial parks. So this will not be all about innovative technology, but on the new, actually innovative way we have to manage industrial area. Because when you look at industrial areas in Europe, mostly, at this scale, actually, you don't have a lot of, or you are very diverse, but you don't have a really strong governance at the industrial park scale. So yesterday, I show you this life cycle of industrial areas from the ideas of when you get the idea of building a new park, when you select its location, the activities, the plot development and equipment to the plant, the park operation, and at the end, requalifications. And I will try to show a few examples of projects I find very innovative and way that people are managing industrial areas. So, but first, I want to put all this in a perspective of what is needed by the companies, which is by the business, which is quite interesting. So here you have a company with every process they have inside, and material flows and energy flows actually go through the company and then go out again. So it's kind of two different directions, and the company usually take care of these parts. It's actually what they need to do, and they have more and more challenge both for the inputs and for the outputs, not only on waste management, but also on supply, which is a growing issue. So there is a lot of technical, logistical constraints here for the supply. Then the infirm flow circulation is also a problem, and the end of life, of course, we know all about waste management. But we also have this company surrounding here, this gray area, where usually a company doesn't really know how to deal with what is directly in the surrounding, either neighbors, either housing, either green areas, or then here the idea is also to see a little bit, put the company into direct neighborhood, which is one industrial area, and see what can be done at this scale. Another level of decision, which is quite important. I've worked on several industrial areas here in Switzerland or France or Tunisia, and I've seen that we usually either deal with land planners or environmental protection. Usually at the beginning I was here all the time. I was with the environmental protection, and they try to push into the industrial estate management or the state planning or the industrial estate planning, so that something happened to in order to have some eco-efficiency strategies. And then more and more projects start to deal with the economic promotion, and now with the land planning. So the idea here is that if you look in any project I've worked so far on the governance of industrial parks, we always have to bring together these three parties, because they usually don't work together, or actually sometimes they work against one each other, even if they're working in the same state or the same government. So the idea here of eco-industrial development is really to bring this three dimension into the management of industrial area. Different layers when you speak about developing an industrial estate, an industrial area. It's a bit what we talked about yesterday already, so I won't take too much time. But we have different, of course, in the planning here, a lot of issue on where do you locate, what are the main networks that are available, landscape protection, and then land availability, which will be a very strong influence on what you will do in your industrial estates, if the land is available or not, at what price, And actually, this drives a lot of decision on how you plan and manage your industrial estates, but then it doesn't really think on resource efficiency when you talk about land availability and how you locate your companies. And there was also one issue here is how you make industrial estates more dense, actually. How do you increase the density in your industrial estate in order to favor also neighboring that will be beneficial for different partners, and that also you don't expand your industrial estates so that it's also then comes to landscape protection when you when you actually expand too much, then it's very fragmented and it's not that efficient anymore. So then you have the equipment. We will also discuss a little bit how we can have share equipment. We already talked about that yesterday. Then it's the regional economy issue and the social networking. I had that here because I think it's very important in the governance of eco-industrial park, and we saw all around the world very different ways of managing social networking inside industrial estates. We had the example of speed dating for industries yesterday, and there is actually many different ways of doing that, which are quite innovative as well to bring the different economic players around the table. Okay, one first example which was particularly good when I did the survey was an example of urbanism projects in Barcelona. Why was it that good? Because it was actually, so here we're in the planning phase or the requalification phase. So when you need to deal with how do I bring new activities to an area where it's already some other players here, and what dimension should I use? Because usually in urbanism project, the one I've seen actually on including industrial area, it's very hard for architects and urbanists to deal with the different function that you have on the territory, and they always try to make them separate a little bit. And here it's a very nice example. It's called 22 Barcelona, and it's how you can actually work together also with kind of social innovation on bringing together the different function of your territories and make them work together in order already in the planning phase to highlight where you can find synergies, where you can have co-location or neighboring with benefits that will benefit the different players. And then they work also on green areas, and they work on infrastructure like transport, because they think everything in a systematic way. So this obliged them to have a very strong social networking and a participative approach with the different players and the economic promotion. And okay, I thought it was a very good example of a systemic urban project, which include actually economic activities. Of course, there is no petrol refinery in the middle of Barcelona, but there is also some very intensive economic activities. And yeah, I think it was nice projects. And I've seen quite a few of them. Okay, I'm not an architect or urbanist. Few of them that really integrate in a large scale like this different dimension of industry and material flows, and in such a systemic way. Then if you come to more really industrial parks, so René talked about eco-industrial park before, so and we talked about it yesterday as well, but I just want to show again this picture, which how can we be innovative in the way of managing industrial parks? And we had some example yesterday from Simo as well, which how we can have a park infrastructure that will take care of other industries in order for their industries to be able to focus on what they want to do, the production, and this body that exists in the park will work on of course, favoring byproducts exchange sometime, or joint supply, joint handling of waste, mutualized service. So through recycling infrastructure, shared infrastructure, or even a resource center for teaching, for handling of industrial process, for security. So there is a lot of way of having some kind of body and governance inside the industrial area. And of course, we already know several examples, but I think there's some innovation also to develop, and some model to scale up, so that we really have a good governance in industrial estates. And the first idea here in the Eco-Industrial Park, these are pictures from a workshop organized by Sophie's, and Benoit is here. He took these pictures. How to bring people, companies around the table to see, okay, how do we build this services sharing? How do we build this collaboration? How do we build the body, the structure you want to have in the industrial area? Because they're very diverse. We will see a couple of examples. But I think the best way to do it is to ask the company what they want to see, what they want to have in their industrial estate. So this is already something which is not really innovative anymore, but on social networking there is a lot of examples, some tools or some workshops. So there is many ways of doing it, and many ways also to innovate on how to do that. Here is actually a very typical project management wheel, when you see actually when you start from identification of your opportunities, then you move into the assessments and the barrier removal, and then to the commercialization. So actually every project has to go through this wheel, which is very typical. So you start here with case study mimicking, or you want to innovate and you have new processes. Then you do benefits and cost analysis, or even life cycle analysis, if you want to be sure that what you will develop is actually the most efficient solution. Here you have then maybe you need technological developments, regulatory approval, financing, and business-to-business contracts. So it's really the process of bringing the people and work together in industrial areas. Of course, you also need the public approval, which is very important. And then you can commercialize and then publish, review, and start again on a new process. Why am I show you this? Because it's very important to go through all the process. In some cases the idea was to go too fast. You identify the opportunity and you want it to happen, but if you don't do anything that is needed in order for the players to take this opportunity as their own, then it's not happening. And this is a second example, which is a very good example of a joint project and how you can build a consensus on a solution. This is a project in Geneva, in Switzerland. So it's a Geneva Lake Nation sure energy production network. So this is the UN headquarters in Geneva, and this is the lake here. And we have now a network of water that is circulating through all the international organization area based on the temperature of the lake. So here we pump the water at 40 meters deep, and it's all year, it's 6 degrees. So in summer we just circulate the water, so it's a cooling system. And in winter, through heat pump, we extract few energy from this water, and then we make a flow like 40, 45 degrees, which is enough actually just for the heating system of all this organization. Here you see the names. And they also use these networks then to watering irrigation of public places with the lake water. So it's 3 use. Okay, but why I wanted to show you this, because here you have the Serrano headquarters. It used to be a very big pharmaceutical company in Geneva. And when they decided a few years ago to renovate their headquarters, they went to the State Energy Service and say, okay, I want to do something innovative. I want to do something new. What can I do? I want to do something sustainable. So the states propose a new technology, so with heat pump based on the water of the lake. The technology is not that new. Actually, we have other networks working like this in this around the lake in Geneva and all around the world. But the idea is that when they come back to Serrano and say, we want to do it, Serrano say, okay, how much does it cost? And it was about 5 million or something. And Serrano say, okay, but for, I think it was 1 or 2 million, I can have my own boiler and all the system working with gas or fossil fuel. So 2.5 more money for sustainable energy sources, it's too much. So what they've done is that the state of Geneva say, okay, if we find other partners that allow us to reduce the cost of your technology to the same price of a fossil fuel burner, will you do it? And they say yes. So the state went to all the other organizations and tried to convince them to join the network. They all say yes, but nobody wanted to pay for the network at the beginning. I mean, take the risk that transform all the infrastructure here. So they had to deal with a third operator, which was the energy provider of the state of Geneva. And also the states agreed to take the risk. So the states invest the money, and then when it was done, they get it back without interest. So they just take the risk on their own so that the network can be built. And it was, I think it's a very good example. Now it's running for a few years, and they're connecting more and more networks. Actually, the pump chamber is already too small, so they cannot add any more pumps. So the network is already full. And so that's a very good example of a way of working together on making the thing happen. Then it's allowed me to go into the role really of the park operator. We've seen a lot of example on the chemical industry or petrochemical industry, but we have also had some example yesterday that this can happen also with SMEs. I mean, with parks, we have a very high diversity of activities and smaller industries. And I think we can reproduce this idea of the park operator as a really way of doing innovative governance in industrial parks. So the role they can have is very diverse, of course, and they usually, what we see is that they work on joint infrastructure, utility operation, supply and waste handling, or logistic. But actually, in a lot of cases, they're really on-site inside the park, which actually doesn't exist everywhere. And they are actually the best when you locate it inside the park to do all the studies and to develop the business model that is needed for projects to happen in the park. In many cases I've seen, they actually come from outside, architects or developers, and they're not really aware of the culture of the park, its history, and why something may work or not. So they can not be as innovative as some people that really know the history of what's happening inside the park. So they can develop business model, they do project development, they sometimes support risk, of course, financial risk. They're very good then at communication and social networking because they know also everyone. And they know the story of the park, and they can do interaction with public administration. And also on the park management, it's a kind of innovative way now to deal with the relation of the industry with the municipality and the administration, because usually so many companies told me that they don't know who to speak to. They have 15 phone numbers from the administration, and when they have one problem, then they doesn't know where to go, how to deal with it. Then sometimes they just don't do things they could do because it's not really clear how to deal with this. So one example I find very good, okay, it's mostly for chemical industry, but anyway, it's very good. It's a private company called Infraserve in Germany. So they do a lot of site operation, management, and consulting in industrial area. They're active at 4 or 5 different areas in Germany, and they really are the specialist inside this park to provide services. They provide utilities for companies, waste management, and logistics. So they have. What is interesting is that they mostly work with big companies like chemical players, but they also provide all the same services to all the SMEs that are in the surroundings. So it means that it also works at both scale. And as I told you before, so we had some example where this same kind of model will work for other type of park when you only have SMEs. So I would say that to replicate these models, there is different way of doing it, actually. This is a sketch on all different type of public-private partnership you can find, actually, from the public here, the municipal authority, to really the private, when the private sector does everything. And in between, in my experience, I've seen, most of these different type of collaboration, different ways of setting up an infrastructure that will allow good governance inside and innovative governance inside the industrial park. So I won't detail that. I don't have time, but it's and the right way to do it is actually very based on the local culture, on its history, on the motivation, either more public or more private, depending on the history of the park you're working with. Okay, last thing I want to show you, we raised the question yesterday, how can we measure efficiency, how can we measure success in this kind of project? And actually the only very established example I know about this is the Chinese EIP label. So in China, they have a national label for industrial parks, so eco-industrial parks, which is based on these 21 criteria. Sorry for the quality, but I think you can still see. So it's based on economic development indicators, material reduction and recycling, pollution control, and administration and management. And here you see, for example, the public awareness degree with eco-industrial development, the establishment of information platforms. So really they have a way for park they can apply to this label, and when they get it, they can get also subsidies to work on more and more solutions. So we have very diverse way of managing, dealing with success stories and to assess them. But what is particularly interesting here is that they really have that at the national level legislation as a way to favor and to go into eco-industrial development. Two questions at the end to conclude. Actually, all this presentation here was kind of good practice, of good idea. Really, it's raising this question: is who is taking care of the system? Who is taking care of industrial estates? Actually, there is no real governance of industrial estates in many countries in Europe. So, should we create something, body or legislation or policies that will actually favor this kind of governance in industrial estate, because it's probably something that is missing. And then how we can spread and foster innovation for efficient resource management, I really think is how with these innovative business models, like I show you very few examples, but there is very diverse experience, and we can learn from that to make things happen on a much faster rate in European countries. Thank you for your attention.